When I woke this morning, something inside of me told me this would be my day.
Well, it's time for the Dealership News Podcast. This is Kelly Kleiman of dealershipnews.com. And today we travel north of the border into Canada to visit with Brandon Wilkinson. Little bit of my favorite Gordon Lightfoot in the background there to welcome Brandon. It's, he's a car dealership owner by trade, blogger and writer in his in-between moments. And if you want a Wrangler, check him out at Woodworth Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Limited in Kelowna, British Columbia, and tell him Dealership News sent you. Brandon and I became acquainted through the pages of Driving Sales, where we're both senior contributors to their SEO benefit and our ego's gratification. Brandon, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, great. Thank you for reaching out and having me. I appreciate it.
That was my most rambling introduction of all time, but, what can I tell you? Sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm bad, and sometimes I'm in between. So,
yep.
have you always been a car guy, or did you just sort of wake up one day and happenstance brought you into the automotive industry?
No, definitely not a car guy. Actually, if anything, I probably had the same view that the majority of people do about salespeople, where, I used to think salespeople were like sleazy or dishonest or lazy, and maybe that's not the majority of what people think, but that's definitely what I thought about them when I was younger. And so I'm a welder by trade, actually, built 400-barrel tanks for the oil field, agricultural equipment, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of stumbled into the automotive industry by accident, quite honestly. The way that happened was, so when we were building tanks in the oil field, we'd work 4 10-hour days, and then we'd have every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. So on a Friday, I took my wife's car in to get service at a General Motors dealership. And this is when I was about 22 years old, and I got talking to one of the salespeople there. We were thinking about upgrading her car into an SUV. And the way that the dealership was set up, the sales offices were in the center of more or less the showroom. And it was kind of like a fishbowl where all the offices had their windows kind of facing each other, so you could see into all the offices. And so I was sitting down talking to the sales consultant, and he was awesome. We got along really well, and I mean, like to this day, I have no idea where this came from, but I was sitting there, and keep in mind, I don't have any automotive experience at this point, or sales experience, or what have you. It was just a welder. I think I still had dirty hands from working, kind of thing, but. We were talking, and 4 of the 6 offices were dark, meaning that the lights were off. And I was like, I could fill one of those offices for you if you're looking for, a sales consultant. And I guess maybe call it instincts. And so I blurted that out. I still don't know where it came from. And then to my surprise, he's like, actually, yeah, we're looking for somebody. Let me go grab the sales manager. And then at that point, I was sweating. I was nervous, really nervous. And so we went and got the sales manager, and he was really kind, and he came over, and we visited for a little bit, and then he got a general manager involved, and I was like, oh, no, where is this going? And yeah, so that was on a Friday. On the Monday, they gave me a call and said, hey, welcome to the automotive industry, and you start in 2 weeks. So that's kind of how I got into it, and that's where that's kind of it's been my passion since. I didn't really go finding it. It just kind of, I guess, more or less found me. So, yeah.
Well, unless you're a former NFL quarterback, you don't just become a dealership owner. So what did your path look like? You got on the sales floor, obviously. You did well, and then what happened?
Yeah, so farthest thing from an NFL quarterback, I can't even throw a spiral, so I hate to admit that, but it's true. So once I had some success in sales, I moved into a sales management position at that dealership for a couple of years, and then a general management position. And then from there, opportunities started to kind of open up a little bit. I was 27, the general manager of a pretty successful dealership. We moved 800 retail pieces per year, so it was a decent size. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so basically the way it happened was where I ended up with Woodworth was the owner of Woodworth had been involved for 30 years. He was looking for somebody to kind of come in and take over. And my father-in-law and the owner of the dealership were acquaintances. I don't know if they're close friends, but they were definitely acquainted with each other. And they go to this one junior hockey game that they go to a year. And I don't know how they ended up sitting together, but they did. It was just more by chance. And so they got talking to each other, and my father-in-law knew I wasn't, real happy or comfortable with where I was at that particular time. And he said, you should get a hold of my son-in-law, and I think he's looking for a change. So that's what happened. And then Don gave me a call, and we met a couple of times, and he fell in love with the idea of me coming in and being a local kid and, a young family and all that kind of stuff. And then he gave me an opportunity to buy into the company. So that's kind of where it all started.
So that's how you leveraged your way in. That was through your father-in-law, right? So, or your father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
well, you had to have, when you got to that dealership, you probably realized, okay, we need to make some changes. When did you decide to implement those changes, and what did those changes look like to be able to pick up the business and grow it?
Sure. So actually nothing too complicated. I hate to be disappointing, but there really wasn't. It was an old school dealership. So it didn't, the way it was operated, it didn't need anything really that would be surprising to any other dealer listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely came down to just marketing and really just investing in the employee development. Those were the two biggest things. I went from the General Motors dealership that had, it was a $7 million facility. It was really nice. I think we had 40 employees at that particular location. And then the Chrysler facility that I went to, it wasn't quite as extravagant. By that I mean it had these huge, just picture I think they're 8 feet wide by maybe 5 feet high windows, and they were fixed. There was no ventilation in the showroom,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have air conditioning. They didn't have air conditioning in there. They didn't have cell phone reception. They didn't have Wi-Fi. They didn't have a coffee machine. They didn't have a water cooler. There was no client lounge. There was nothing like that. It was very, very, very old school. It was straight out of the 80s. It was crazy. So anyway, not only did I have to convince my General Motors clients to drive an extra 30 miles and change product, but I also had to get them adjusted to the new facility. And, thankfully we ended up having the clients follow me, and now we have all those things that I mentioned, fixed and stuff like that. So, thankfully that's all been addressed, and now we have air conditioning and Wi-Fi and cell reception, all that kind of stuff. But I think in terms of marketing, and what we do, that's maybe a little bit unique. And, I've talked about this in some of the blogs on driving sales and things of that nature, but we take a different approach. I think what you find now is a lot of dealers kind of get sucked into this, especially with Facebook. I'm using that as an example in this situation, but if you come in and buy a vehicle, or if you come in and test drive a vehicle, or if you come in and do this and that, then we'll give you, a gift card or a fuel card, or then we'll give you an extra $1,000 off. It's almost like a bribe in a way, where it's if you do this, then we'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to get caught up in that. So what we did was we reversed it, and now when we run contests or what have you, we say thank you. So I'll give you one example. So what we did was, and we're the dealership is actually located outside of Kelowna. We're in a community of 180 people, so it's a very, very small community. Anyway, so what we did was on a Tuesday, to kind of test this idea, we ran a contest on Facebook where, I guess it wasn't so much a contest as it was a thank you to the people that have done business with us to that point. So it wasn't about driving traffic to our website or to our Facebook page. It was about thanking the people that had already been supporting us along the way and along our journey, because that's really what has led to our success to that point. So what we did was on a Tuesday, we said, okay, here's a couple of NHL tickets, hotel room, fuel, food, some spending money, all that kind of stuff, the normal thing. But it was just our approach. So on a Tuesday, we said, thank you for being, supportive of us and our team and our community. Because of that, we're going to enter your name for you automatically into a draw that we're going to have on Friday. So pay attention, so just kind of watch for that on Facebook. So Friday comes along, we do all our due diligence and work and getting it all set up, and then we video record drawing the name and all that kind of stuff, and we pull a winner. And that post ended up reaching over 27,000 people. And you got to remember, we're in a community of 180 people. So our engagement through doing things of that nature is far higher and more impactful that we found versus doing the traditional bribe. And we only do it once in a while. We don't do it, you know, I find that dealers constantly are trying to find ways to spend money, you know, in a way unnecessarily. And we really depend on this kind of strategy to draw engagement up. So that's just one form of marketing. We do the same thing in service where, like, if you come in for service and you have a really, you know, you have a smile on your face, you have a really positive energy about you, and you've been a regular, let's say, and you come in and you get your oil change done, we give an allowance to the service and parts department, like a weekly one, where they can do with it as they please. The only thing that we ask is that they explain to the client why they're giving them a free oil change. So what will happen, just picture yourself being a client at a dealership that you've been to a few times or whatever, and unexpectedly when you go up to pay your bill, they're like, don't worry about it. Like, we really appreciate how kind you are and your positive energy and that you pay your bills on time, all the time, and things of that nature. And so what happens is, like, we give them that feeling of, like, it's just that moment, right? That feeling of this unexpected surprise that they're just thrilled. It's not about the money at that point. It's just about that feeling that they leave the dealership with. So then what happens from there is that they go and tell their spouse, they go and post it on Facebook without us asking them to. You know, they go to the coffee shop the next morning or whatever and start spreading the word for us. And we found that's been huge for us. And I actually got that idea from a book by Dan and Chip Heath called Moments. It just brilliant idea. So I definitely robbed it from them, but just kind of tweaked it into our own marketing. And then the third thing that I want to tell viewers about and dealers is one thing that we budget for that came from John Ruhlin, who wrote a book called Giftology. Mm-hmm. I think he's kind of known as a Cutco man in the States. Anyway, so the idea that I got from him was, like, come up with a gift for people that means something to them after they buy a vehicle. So if, for example, like, if one of your hobbies is fishing, then what we'll do is we'll get, like, your name customized on a tackle box, right? Or like 30 days after you buy a vehicle, you'll go to the post office, you'll get this package in the mail, and it's a tackle box with your last name engraved on it, or it's a fishing rod. Or what we've done a lot of is, like, and this has worked really well, is, like, we get a walnut cutting board that has your last name custom engraved on it. And when people receive that, like, we've been doing it for a couple of years now, and to this day, nobody has used the cutting board for its purpose, right? Like they put it on a mantle on top of their fireplace or in the living room, or they put it in the kitchen on display. And what's so great about that is, like, we don't put our name on any of this stuff, by the way. Like, we don't stamp Woodworth Dodge on there anywhere. So it's just about a genuine thank you, and we give it to them. And then what they do is they put it in the kitchen, and every morning they see this cutting board on display, and subconsciously Woodworth Dodge is being impressioned in their mind over and over and over and over again. And then what happens is we're top of mind when they reach out or when they want to go out and buy their next vehicle. So things like that don't cost a lot of money, like that cutting board is $100, right? But it's $100 cutting board, right? Like, usually you can buy cutting boards for like $20. So this is a really, really, really nice, thoughtful, which is important, gift, which is also important to the client after they buy the vehicle. So that's been tremendous for us. It's really, really worked a lot. Worked really well, sorry.
Well, I think it's a great idea to give them something that's not really related to automotive, but they use every day. So you're sort of in their grill every day. I actually have one. Yeah. I don't have one from you, but I actually have a monogrammed cutting board. My dad broke it the third day after we got it. It's another story. But that sounds like a really great, I was just going to say, what you have going on up there sounds like a really great branding strategy. I was going to ask you what you think the difference between Canadian dealers and American or United States dealers are, and it just seems as though it's the size of the dealership and knowing your client base more than anything than being able to touch them. And it seems like you did it in a very good way. So I don't know that.
Well, and I think that whole, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so I just don't know that there is really that much difference. We also touched on the fact that there's a huge distrust between people and car dealers. but it seems as though you've been able to kind of sort of bridge that perception with being a regular guy and just not trying to sell every minute of the day and just trying to create a nice brand and and a business entity that people could trust and want to engage with.
Well, you're right, and I think that holds true for any dealer. I don't think it matters what size of dealer you are or where you're located. I don't really buy into this bigger is better stuff or whatever. Or if I get too big, I can't connect with my client as well. I just don't buy it. Like I think there's ways to, if you're intentional and pure about your intentions, you can make it work. And what's fascinating about what we do, I think this came from the book called Like I See It by Dale Polak. It's fairly new, but he's the founder of V Auto. And when I was reading it, a stat in there blew my mind. It was from NADA, and it was about how the customer acquisition cost for dealers is $600 on average, which is mind blowing to me. Our customer acquisition cost is $250, and with that, in 3 years, we grew our sales volume 61%, so 20% year over year, while keeping our customer acquisition cost at $250 or less. And we do that, like a lot of dealers. This is probably the biggest difference. Is like a lot of dealers say the right things, and they maybe talk themselves into thinking that they're doing the right things when it comes to, like establishing trust with the clients, integrity, transparency, and all those things. But the biggest thing is like we act on it, and we're not the only dealer that does this, by the way. It's just, but we do. We act on it every single day. It's ingrained in our culture, so we don't have to depend on spending an exorbitant amount of money on marketing, because our marketing goes through our clients, right? Like it's all word of mouth and repeat referral. Not all, but the majority of our marketing comes down to that.
You're not buying clients. You're not buying customers. You're earning them. That's a different way that's a nice approach. I guess you could do that up there.
Yeah, for sure.
It's too competitive down
you
here.
can do that anyway. I don't know why it has to be isolated to one dealership or one area or in Canada or the States. It's a mindset and it's an approach. I think we've inherited a lot of distrust from previous generations, the way dealers were operating in say the 80s and 90s and what have you. But I mean, I just don't think we're doing enough either on our end to rebuild it. So that's all I'm trying to do, is just rebuild that trust because I know what it's like not to trust a dealership. I know what it's like not to trust salespeople. I was that guy. I was like the extremist on that side of it. And now I've completely reversed my thinking because I'm on this side of it, and I can see that we can make it work. It doesn't have to be, it can be transparent and can be a win for the dealer and for the consumer.
By the way, you keep regressing to the 80s. I would go further back and say it goes as far as into the 30s and 40s. It's having shady car salesmen goes back a long, long way. And before that, they were probably shady covered wagon salesmen and probably goes and chariot salesmen. So how are sales up there? Down here, we have, as I mentioned to you before we went on the air here, I've seen some numbers from May over May this year, last year, that show that we might be in a wall hitting phase here as far as new car sales are concerned. Right. What's business like up in Canada?
Right. Overall, it's pretty good. I mean, I know for Chrysler, right now as an industry, we're about break even from this time last year. I think we're down like 0.6%, so really not much. But I'll tell you, like our dealership, I mentioned we're in a community of 180 people. We sell 400 on average, usually about 400 retail units a year, new and used. And so that works out to about 17 new a month on average. And for April of this year, we sold 29 new vehicles, and then we actually repeated that in May. So we sold 29 in new vehicles in May as well. That's without pre-owned. That's just new. So those are the two best months that we've had in the 33-year history of this company. So, and really, I can't stress this enough. I mean, we just go back to like, we don't worry about trying to sell the client today. It's about building relationships long term. And what happens is we don't have these up and down months, right? Like we don't have a lot of roller coaster rides in our dealership, it's very consistent, and I think that plays a big part of it. It's just, if you come in and you're not ready to buy today, that's fine. Like we're worried about building a relationship with you so that when you are ready, you think of us, and clients have been really good at honoring that. So.
Sure. So no dealership is one man alone. You have some vendors. So I want to ask you, which vendors do
Yep.
you swear by and which vendors do you swear at? And you've got to name names and you've got to be honest.
Yeah.
I can hardly
No
wait to hear.
problem. I like this question. No, actually, do you know what? Pretty fortunate. We have great relationships with actually even other dealerships, quite honestly, for dealer transfers and things of that nature. So we've done really well there. In terms of vendors that I swear by, one is our and I hope that this counts as one, but our DMS provider is PBS. They're based out of Calgary up here in Canada, Calgary, Alberta, but I know that they have dealers down in the States that they have in their portfolio, and they're just really aligned with our philosophy and what we do. They're family owned, but they're a big corporation. Like they've done really well for themselves. So I mean, PBS up here, I would say is definitely our favorite. But I'll tell you what, like I've definitely had situations and phone calls with our dealer operations manager where I've had to close the door and definitely thrown out a few cuss words at them. So, and that's mostly due to like inventory, nothing out of the ordinary, just inventory control and management and our vehicle performance allowance numbers and things like that. It's just, it definitely gets heated for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, you would think. Well, I wanted you to get a little bit more nasty, but since you're not going to, I won't force you into it.
I can't. I don't think it's in the Canadian culture to be like, honestly. And I can say the same for America. I just mean Canada kind of has that, nice guy reputation or what have you. So
until you get on the ice, right? Or you're a hockey mom or dad.
Isn't that the truth? You're
Right.
bang on with that. Yeah.
Right.
They joke about there's really nice guys, and I'll include myself in this, but like I'm a nice guy when you know me off the ice, but it's something once I lace up those skates, it's like it cuts the circulation off to my brain. I just become this meathead on the ice, and I'm out to murder everybody. It's so bad. It's not good. So you're right on you hit the nail on the head with that.
So is hockey a pretty big sport up in Canada? I'm kidding. By the way, Wayne Gretzky, I don't know if he's still there, but he used to live about 2 miles from me. Maybe, about 2 miles, mile and a half from me. I'd see him at Starbucks once in a while. It was always interesting. Wow, there's Wayne Gretzky. It's, holy cow. We got a lot of those guys up by here. So what are you...
Yeah, good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Actually, hockey was... there was a big strike several years ago, and the hockey season, I think they went a year or a half year or whatever it was without even playing. And Gretzky, I saw him in Starbucks. I'm thinking, oh my God, here's the greatest hockey player of all time, the greatest athlete of all time for a sport that currently doesn't even exist. Because at that point it was like, oh my God, it was in such trouble. It's good to see it really, lately. It's been doing fantastic, especially down in the States, getting a lot more popular. But let's talk about your thoughts regarding the direction that dealers are taking these days in regards to the ever-changing digital marketplace. Not just your dealership alone, but do you think that Canadian dealers as a whole are adjusting appropriately, and is it overrated?
Good question. I think we are adjusting. I want to say slowly but surely. I think the automotive industry and any type of tech seems to kind of have a distant relationship. Like I think it's just slow moving, and I mean, like I'm personally, like I'm all for anything that brings more transparency to our industry, and in a way for the transaction process to become a little bit smoother for the clients and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, like it's a slow process for us. I don't know why it is. I can't explain it. It's just the way it is for us in this industry. But, when I look at companies like, down there, Scott Painter for Fair.com is getting that off the ground and going. And, there's a company like Carvana, and there's another one called Vroom, I think, but I don't think their situation's too good right now. But there's a lot of noise in the industry for that kind of stuff, and it's all welcomed as long as it's healthy. I'm all for it. So.
Yeah, there's a new vendor every day in the automotive industry, which is good because we're going to start selling advertising on my blog pretty soon. And we've got 133,000 backlinks, and look at with this data that I have right now, and some of the other things that we're going to bring on board. I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. We're pretty excited about it. But I'm not here to plug myself. Let's talk about your book, Rethink Selling. Right? You've got a book out there. It's called Rethink Selling. I'm waiting for my copy. You and I, we're very frequent contributors to drivingsales.com. I think there's a competition there between people to see how many views you get on your blogs. I try not to do it every day. There's some guys out there who are always chiming in, but I have a lot of fun with it. But you actually write books, not just blogs. So let me ask you what your top 3 reveals are regarding what we don't know about selling and what we really need to know about selling. Now, understand that I precede the 1980s, so there have been a few of these books out there. I might already know these things, but if I don't, I'm not going to say anything. So just go ahead and share with us what are your top 3.
Well, I appreciate your kindness. Thank you. The book is actually going to be available on Amazon. And then all major distributors here in the first part of July. So you can kind of look for it. I'll be posting it on social media and all that kind of stuff. I'll be honest, like, this is kind of hard to talk about a bit, but I've struggled personally with mental health, and the auto industry can be really demanding, even thankless at times, I think, and obviously stressful. So and that's no different than any business owner will tell you, and that's really what you are if you're a commission salesperson as a business owner. So it's tough. It's a grind, especially in the first couple of years for people. That's kind of the make it or break it type era. So, but yet it seems like we don't have much support from our industry when it comes to guidance or how to handle this roller coaster of a ride that really is this emotional roller coaster story that we go on. So. Anyway, I really felt like we were missing some tools and resources that can help sales professionals and even managers and owners, and they need to develop their mental strength. And so what I did a couple of years ago, I went down to West Palm Beach, Florida, and I saw Tony Robbins and went to his Unleash the Power Within event. And, he said something in there that really resonated with me, and this is tied into the book. And he said, success is 80% mindset and 20% skill. So the vast majority of sales training programs that they tend to focus on the 20% that make you successful, which, are the strategies. And in my opinion, especially as tech evolves, that those strategies are going to become more and more irrelevant. So, but mindset will always be relevant, and it'll always be critical to your success. So I focus my efforts on the 80% for this book. And it's almost like a whole new category for sales training. Like, I don't know of any other sales training book that has kind of taken this approach head on. So we discuss the importance of, self-awareness and gratitude and why having a growth mindset matters. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset, and she talks about a fixed mindset versus a growth one. It's a phenomenal book and an eye-opener, and I highly recommend it. But, and then we also talk about how important momentum is. Once you get it going, how do you get it going? How do you sustain it, and all that kind of stuff. So, and then at the end of the book, I dedicate an entire chapter to resources for fitness, for nutrition, for personal development, sales, and all these other categories. And I wrote it as intentional as I could towards being an evergreen resource for sales professionals so that they can lean on it throughout their career. And I'm going to make it available. Yesterday, I just wrapped up the audio book, so it's going to be available on audio and digital and print. And, it's my hope that sales professionals and owners and managers can look at this and see that there's no fluff. Like, it's 136 pages, and it's just straight to the point. It's just like, look at here's how to correct it. Here's what to do when you're feeling down, or how to avoid those situations as much as you can. So that's why I titled the book Rethink Selling: Why You Only Know 20% of Sales. It's kind of like why you only know 20% of success, because you only know the skill part. You don't know the 80%, or it's not talked about enough in our industry. So that's where the focus is with this. You're
like the Malcolm Gladwell automotive authorship. It's interesting.
Yeah,
That's a great angle.
That's a pretty high compliment.
Well, I'm a
Thank you.
Gladwell fan. He made that analogy
Yep.
between hockey, and I could apply it towards baseball down here. But that's a really interesting angle that you have, and that is something that I've really never heard anybody from the approach that you're taking. I've never heard anything quite like that. And it is unique, actually. So it's called Rethink Selling,
Thank
and
you. Yeah.
it's Brandon Wilkinson. So where are we going to be 25 years from now when most of the vehicles are going to be autonomous and or all electric?
Yeah, for sure. That's a hard one, right? Like, I like the question a lot. It's a tricky one. I think at the speed of technology, it's not unrealistic to expect all autonomous vehicles in the year, 2043?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what role the dealerships will play at this time. We could end up being, just a pickup destination for clients, and, there will be less need for salespeople as time goes on, but we'll see where kind of everything ends up. I think, in my opinion, we're transitioning into a high demand for providing that excellent client experience, and I don't think that'll change. So in order to adapt to that sales transformation, in terms of the client experience, I really believe, and as you know from the book, now that I just covered a bit, but I really believe that it starts with personal transformation. So I think client experience is really going to be emphasized a lot, and I think in 25 years we will see autonomous vehicles everywhere, and we'll more or less just be kind of a pickup destination for clients.
And it'll probably be tied in with some kind of a subscription model, which maybe we could talk about at some other time. So the big question is, what kind of car do you drive and why?
Yeah, so I drive a 2018 Ram Sport 1500.
Nice.
Got it decked out a bit. It looks really sharp. Yeah, it's nice. I like it a lot. And my wife drives 2017 Chrysler Pacifica. We have 2 kids and a black lab, so I mean, that's nice to have the room and things like that. But I've tried SUVs and I've tried cars, but there's just something about a guy in this truck. I mean, I just can't seem to part with it. So I'll be driving trucks as long as they make them. So.
Well, listen, I wanted to thank you for, by the way, I want a Wrangler. I really do want a Wrangler. That will be my next car. But that's all the time we have. This was my longest one ever, and I had a lot of fun with you. So,
sorry.
No, I really enjoyed myself. But time to say goodbye. This is Kelly Kleiman, dealershipnews.com, the podcast. And we've had Brandon Wilkinson on, and he's at Woodworth Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. He owns it in Kelowna, BC. If you're up in the Great White North, make sure you give him a holler. Tell him we sent you. Until we meet again, this is Kelly, dealershipnews.com's podcast for a Tuesday afternoon. It's summertime. Talk to you soon.